Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our inaugural District Development Committee meeting. It's great to have all the members here. I can see huge numbers online, so welcome to you all as you tune in to watch our District Development Committee. Councillors Hadfield and Campbell, if you'd like to join us at the table, you're most welcome. If you don't wish to, you don't have to. Yes, there is the issue of tie. So apologies, I think we're all here so that we don't have any apologies. There are no minutes because it's the first meeting, so that's there's a bit of logic there. Any declarations of interest in respect to the agenda items today? Great, we'll move on to presentations, of which there are none. Now, notification of late items, and we do actually have two. Some of you will be aware of one, but there are two. The first one is the appointment of a deputy chairperson, and we want to make that a late item because it's, I'm sure the reasons are here somewhere, but required to be resolved at the first meeting. There we have it. And the second one is to have an overview of the purpose of the committee. And the intention is that that be very brief. And the reason we're wanting to do it at this meeting is because it affects the next meeting, etc. So I'm going to move that the items, note that the two late items be accepted. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Your Worship. Any discussion? They don't automatically, late items don't automatically get accepted. You have an opportunity to oppose if you wish. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, carried. Thank you. Officer reports. Welcome, Janine. Welcome to our District Development Committee meeting. And you are one of our main people. And first item 7.1, schedule of funding applications. So I will pass to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next three items that are on your agenda, this is historical. They used to be before the former Community Development Committee, and the reporting to that body was due to our community development policy and the need for some reporting to actually go through a statutory body of council, which was at the time that committee and is now by defunct the now District Development Committee. So the first one that's before you is just a summary of the funding allocations that have been made in accordance of the community development policy. And it just gives a bit of a snapshot to the governance body as to how that funding has been allocated and where it's been allocated to, and the linkage to our community development strategy. So of course you will see in 3.4, item 3.4, we've had 41 applications that have been processed since the last meeting of the Community Development Committee, and of those 6 were Community Development Fund, 14 representative, 15 events fund, and 6 for the private cemetery Urupā Fund. And you will see them in the attachment and the schedule attached as to how they've been allocated, the amounts that have been allocated, and then underneath each fund is a summary of the funding that has been allocated for that period and the amount remaining. And you will see a sombre result for all 3 of those main accounts, that there's actually no remaining funding available for the remainder of this financial year. So with the representative grants, there has been 17 approved for this period and the period prior for the financial year. And we have allocated all that funding with the exception of $86.91. So $20,883.09 has been allocated. Are there any questions in regards to those representative ones that you can see?
Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. I really just have a process question. It might apply to all of the different funds. As I see sometimes the amount applied for and the amount approved are different, and just wondering how the how you come to a decision on that.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chairman. We've gone by this, the process is we have a sort of a set amount figure in mind if it's a South Island event, if it's a North Island local event, or if it's overseas. And we generally keep to that allocation. They're always going to apply for more funding than what we're able to give anyway, particularly the overseas, because they go well into the thousands, as you'll be able to see. And it depends on how many people it involves. So if it's a team that has applied, if it's a number of members, which you will see that one of those items is to do with the Te Tu Mataroa, which is the Te Matatini National Kapahaka Festival, which is going to be next week. That's a large number of people, hence why it's a significant amount of funding that was allocated.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thanks, Janine.
Okay, the next one is the event fund. So through the event fund, there's been various different sorts of events, as you will be able to see from going through that list. Another sobering thing, 20 applications processed this current financial year with 52,886 allocated, and we're actually in the red by $866. So all that funding has gone, bearing in mind that we did make allocations at the beginning of the financial year for the fact that there would be rural games. So that is not included in this figure, and also for Matariki celebrations. So we've still got funding for those two main events of councils. Any questions with the event funding?
Your worship.
Thank you. You mentioned the rural games. Can you just explain to us, remind us, and for the newbies, about the New Zealand Rural Games? They get a significant amount of funding from us. So can you just explain the process where we approve that, so, as it doesn't show in here?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chairman, that has been done under delegated authority to the Chief Executive. Because we have funding that we tag at the beginning of financial year, it doesn't need to come to council. The only time it comes to council is if we have no funding, and then council has to make the call as to whether or not we fund it. But in the past 3 rural games, we've been able to set aside funding at the start of the financial year because we know that is a event of significance to our region, but also to our agriculture. And so we make allowance for that at the start of a financial year, and therefore the Chief Executive can do that under his delegated authority.
So just to add to that, when you say we, so if I recall, it came to council as part of annual plan or LTP or something that we would support the New Zealand Rural Games?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, 3 years ago, that's exactly correct. They did come through council because we didn't have the funding tagged within our event fund, so we didn't have anything available. So with that in mind, moving forward, because council had signalled at that time that it was an event to be supported by council in the future, we've actually makes that allocation out of that pool of funding at the start. And to give council members, particularly the new one, to give you an idea of what that level of funding is, it's $20,000, and that has a tag to it that they need to do some kind of an event in Fielding that is in line with the Rural Games timing. And this year they're doing Kids and Country, which is being held in the square on Saturday, the 4th of March. So we've been working closely with the Trust, and Fielding and District Promotion have also been party to that event. So they're adhering to our requirements and stipulation for that funding.
Your worship.
I also have a general question under item number 3 on page 7. And I'm thinking, given that we've now changed, no longer have a community development committee, we would need to revisit the how we allocate out the funds for events, like 3.2. We need to agree on how that's going to be done now. And I think I've raised it before. I'm really keen to see that community development policy come back to council to have another look at about how we do that. So I'm just signalling that that needs to happen.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that's certainly been something that we've raised at officer level, and the governance team have actually brought that to attention of our chief executive, who will be having a conversation with you, and that will be a matter for discussion by council, because we need to also amend the policy to reflect what that decision is in regards to who makes up the assessment panel, but we also need to amend our delegations register to reflect that financial delegation to that assessment panel. So it's definitely on the cards, and it's sitting with Chief Executive at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next one following from that is our community development funding. And from that, we have allocated, we've had 12 applications processed in the financial year. And just to, I guess, expand a bit further, the funding does not include our priority services grant funding, which is outside of this process. This is just the remainder of what we have in the community development fund to allocate. So the amount that has been allocated is $18,201 in the financial year, which is in the red by 1,081. And although I say it's in the red, overall in the community development fund, it will still balance out at the end, just being able to shuffle funding from one to the other. So there's certainly been some interesting applications as part of that process. You'll see that there were a couple of applications that were declined, and for the reasons that have been stipulated within that schedule.
Any questions to do with the Community Development Fund? Your Worship.
Thank you. Can you just explain a bit more about the funding that was given for us providing MDC rubbish bags? Can you just explain what that is? And I see they didn't ask for a specific amount of money.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they asked for rubbish bags that they can put into their kaipaks. It's a bit like similar to what Salvation Army and Manchester House do with their food packs and kaipaks they give for their whānau and the iwi areas. And so they asked if they could include MDC rubbish bags. So the reason why no amount was stipulated is because they didn't know what the cost of the rubbish bags were. So we had estimated giving them 100 bags and worked out what that cost would be.
Can you also explain to me who that group is in our community?
Yes, it's Ngāti Kōwhara.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hey, the next one is our private cemetery and Urupā Fund. You will see that our policy gives the delegated authority to our former Ngā Manu Taikō. And in the past, because there's no replacement governance structure for Ngā Manu Taikō, it has been approved by the Chief Executive, but this time we got members of each of the marae committee together on Zoom, and they helped us go through the process of doing the allocating of funding, which we were able to recommend that through to our community general manager, who signed off on that.
Any questions? Urupā Cemetery Fund. Thanks, Janine. Councillor Underwood.
I think the only private cemeteries, because I noticed that they all got the amount that they asked for, so you weren't expecting others to put that application in and miss out.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the process is that they get invited to put in an application, with applications closing on the 31st of July. And so those other private cemeteries have not put in applications, so it was only based on the applications we received. The policy is quite clear that $1,000 of that funding is to go for private cemeteries, which we have 2 in our district, which are both administered by the Anglican parish of Arua. So they got their $1,000, which they've got 2 private cemeteries that they administer. So that's $500 per cemetery.
Very good. Thank you, Janine.
There's no further questions, just a recommendation there to receive the report.
So we go to page 6, we have a recommendation. Do we have someone like to move? Your worship,
Happy to move that the District Development Committee receives and notes the schedule of applications received and processed under delegated authority in accordance with the Community Development Policy for the period 12th of August 2022 to the 2nd of February 2023.
thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, councillor Short. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, carried. Thank you. Moving to Community Development Strategy Relationship and Liaison Report. Welcome to the table, Janae.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and similar to the previous item, this is something that now comes under the District Development Committee's terms of reference. It stems from our community development strategy. It's one of those actions is in regards to building on relationships and liaisons, and this is the report on the meetings that your former community development advisor, now community wellbeing manager, attends on council's behalf. And so before you are 3 organisations' minutes, which is the Manawatu Health and Wellbeing Group, the Manawatu Community Trust Wellbeing Committee, and Social Issues Network Council of Social Services. So the reports from the period are attached for your information and to be taken as being read and received.
Right, any questions or comments in relation to those reports? Councillor Quigley.
What page are we on?
Page
15
15, but starting at 15
to 47.
through to 47, did you say? 46, yep. Right, if there are no questions or comments, we have a recommendation that the reports from community groups be received for information, which I'll move. Is there a seconder? Councillor McFadyen. Any comment? Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, carried. Thank you. Now we're page 47. Manawatu District Youth Council Annual Report, December 2022.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a report that's been put together by our governance officer, Steph Skinner, on behalf of the Youth Council.
Thank you, Steph.
It's part of the terms of reference for the Youth Council is for them to produce a 6-monthly and a 12-monthly report to Council's committee, which would be the District Development Committee. So this is the annual report for the year ended 5 December 2022, which is put before you for your noting and receipt.
Thank you. Any discussion on the report? Anyone involved like to make a comment? Councillor Blackmore.
Yes, thank you. This report was presented by the outgoing chair, Zoe Vista, in December last year. The new chairperson, Grace, has taken over the reins. So, and I think you've seen minutes later on, but this covers a period of time I can't really report on. Steve, would you like to add anything?
It's a fairly full explanation of the work that they have done here. And it was good to see them growing and doing more governance work, especially in the submission space.
Pretty impressive. So thank you, Councillor Short.
I'm not sure who to direct the question to. Possibly it is Steve. I just see that in the things coming up this year, a new youth drop-in space at Fielding Healthcare. I just wondered if someone could elaborate a little bit more on that.
And those instances, there is the opportunity for youth drop-in space at Dorset, at the Fielding Health Clinic. However, that has not been progressed to date. It was started last year.
Is it a space just for youth, or is it specifically about health?
It's a space where you have the access to health services outside of going to the doctor, as well as a drop-in space.
And being so close to the high school, that's be interesting to
But it's
see.
open to all.
Yeah.
Not just
Oh,
us.
yes, yeah.
That's the plan, but the initial investigations started last year. And it's actually working on wheelchair returns and stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a recommendation, page 47, that the Manawatu District Youth Council Annual Report for the year ended 5 December 2022 be received and noted. Happy to move. Is there a seconder? Councillor Short. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. And we're up to page 54, funding accountability reports to 2 February 2023. Welcome, Janine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A requirement of funding that organisations or individuals receive from councils, that they provide an accountability report just to verify that the funding that we as a council allocated to them, that they used it for what it was intended to. So in the last reporting, there has been a few accountability reports, as you will see, that has come through, or some of which were on the schedule that you've previously received, and some have been from previous funding applications gone into the previous financial year. So you will see those attached. So they're attached for your information, and it's a requirement of the community development policy that we bring them to this committee for your receipt. So obviously there's been a tree or two that has been sacrificed with the amount of attachments that you've had to go through and read. But unless there's any questions, just put through the recommendation that you receive and note them.
Certainly. So certainly take them as read, but do we have any questions? Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. Not specific to these particular reports, but just a question about process again. What sort of timeframe are they required to provide these back? And do we ever have any issue of not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're required to submit them within 2 months following the end of an event or the end of the project. And if they don't, we have a running schedule, and of course Megan, she's picked up that role. She follows up with them if they haven't submitted. But if they don't submit, it means they don't get funding next time, which you might have picked up with the New Zealand Softball Association had applied for funding for the event they had in Palmerston North. Although there was no benefit to the Manawatu district, they didn't qualify anyway because they didn't submit a report from the last time they got funding.
Thank you. Right, page 47, we have a recommendation which you can abbreviate if you'd like to move it. Given nobody wants to, I will. That the District Development Committee receives and notes the following accountability reports as outlined on pages 54 and 55. Is there a seconder? Your worship. Thank you. Any discussion? Motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, carried. So we can skip on 100 pages, which is good going, isn't it? To 154. So with the establishment of this new committee, we've taken the Manawatu District Youth Council minutes and Community Committee minutes are coming to this committee now instead of the council meeting, which will, part of the advantage of that is to free up time at council. So they have been circulated. I'm happy to go through one at a time, and if the liaison councillor wishes to make a comment, please do. Some of them are quite historical. So youth council, any comment?
recent.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just make a comment, maybe on the most recent minutes. If you've read them, you might see a kind of shifting in focus for the Youth Council. That's been a discussion between a few of us, myself, Lynn, Kathy, Steph, and with Joey coming on as the Youth Engagement Officer, really just looking at where they'd be focusing their time and effort, elevating the role of the Youth Council more around voice. Perhaps in the past, there's been quite a focus on running events, which will continue, but coming into an L2P cycle, we were really keen to lift the capability of that group to give us some really great feedback and input into that work. And that has then led into a change in the way they are organised. So when they meet, how often they meet, what the focus is. So we've got a mix of very similar to council formal meeting and informal meetings as well. We're still working through that. We're looking to have them approve the recommendations next week.
Thanks, Lara.
Take questions.
Thanks, Lara. And also thanks, Councillor Blackmore. Right, moving to Apathy. Councillor Bielski, any highlights on the Apathy minutes?
Basically, I think we've got good subsidy for the show from the transport firm just down the road here. Everything's functioning good. There are very few come to the meeting. Basically, the sign approaching into Apathy. It's not quite what they hoped for, so they developed some kind of a barrier. I mean, a board behind it so that it reflects better the cost quite a lot of money. Overall, yeah, things are good here.
Thank you, Councillor Bielski. Moving on to Bainesi Rangiotu. Any comment?
There was something that they wanted to express to the council. It was a big thank you for supporting the Christmas functions. And also a suggestion that's also noted in the minutes is that if we can have a guest speaker, and so it's papers as rock between you and myself, Helen, her worship, but I did express that you were excited to come to the AGM and do a kōrero on the value of the community and the relationship they have with MDC.
Thank you, Councillor Bill. If anyone's got any questions on the way through, please just put your hand up, but we're onto Cheltenham. I'm happy there. Glenarua, Taikaria. Any comment from the back row? Himatangi.
Yeah, they seem to be ticking along okay. Yeah, they're quite happy. They're very pleased with the beach access that was upgraded. Yeah, it made a world of difference. And they're also very happy with the new playground that's been installed, the skate park and the upgrade there. They're a bit concerned about pre-Christmas about the state of it, but that's been resolved.
Thanks, Councillor Quarry. I was there for the big dig. Interestingly enough, I didn't get anything. But yeah, it was a great day and it was a vibrant community having a lot of fun. It was great. So, and it's good to see a little bit of a checkered recent past with the committee. So nice to hear your comments there. So yeah, it's good. Huanui. Councillor Underwood.
Seem to be very organised community.
Yes.
Not that I've had huge experience with committees, but they are very organised. And they had their triennial meeting, which was the first one I attended, and that went pretty well. The committee and the chair got elected with no problems. They're applying for a grant for a pathway in 2 stages, so they're very into that, very organised, and also a community event they're organising that they're hoping to combine with Collatim and run it as an annual event. So that's what's big on there. agenda at the moment.
Huge grudge match thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Mm,
they were saying a tug of war, I think, last soccer, cricket, and a tug of war was the last thing that they were.
Yeah, councillor Blackmore and I are getting on our game faces, getting ready, aren't we? Yeah,
I'm trying.
thanks. Thank you. Kim Bolton.
There hasn't been one. The meeting last Monday was cancelled due to weather.
Yep.
Tuesday, sorry.
Kiwatia, there's 2 minutes there. It's they're going well. I'm just going to take it as read. Nothing. Just this one. Pahongana. Makes it easy. Any questions on Pahongana? Sanson. Councillor Short.
These minutes are before I started as their liaison councillor, but they did have their triennial meeting last week, and there was just one issue that was raised that I'd just like to bring to your attention, and that's the markets at the weekend. They're having quite a bit of difficulty managing parking of the public. And the public are spilling over into areas they're not meant to go, and volunteers are putting up with quite a bit of abuse from car owners and in some cases stall holders about where parking is occurring. And one of the car park owners, I'm not sure if it was it's the service station, the Gold service station there, he said if it continues, I'm going to ban you from parking here altogether, which would actually greatly affect how many people could attend. Megan and Janine attended that meeting as well, and we made some suggestions around getting a little bit better traffic management in place, even if it went as far as trialling having a parking warden or a security guard there, just to alleviate the tensions, because I think the biggest risk is the volunteers that run the market, who do it for the love of it, actually will end up getting so harassed that they'll stop. So they've got money they can spend, so we had to look at some options that they're going to look into.
Thank you. Rangawahia.
You can speak.
Mark's at the back there, but,
Come on, Grant, come on.
All good. Waituna West.
This be me. As everybody knows, I missed the first meeting on the 16th of November. But the good news is I've got it in my calendar for the next about 2 weeks' time. But
That on your computer?
no, it's in my diary now. But Steve was there. Is there any concerns out there?
and Waituna, basically struggling a bit to get meetings.
Speak up, Steve.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Waituna, they're struggling a little bit to get their community up and running again. They're struggling to get a civil defence data bank of phone numbers and stuff like that they've been asked quite a few times. The hall hasn't yet been painted, but I'm not sure whether or not they've updated that one. Basically, yeah, I think the next meeting is coming up shortly, isn't it? Yeah, but they had their triennial. They have their triennial with the next one, I think.
The meeting was postponed.
Was it?
It's off again. Yeah. But I've moved it on my calendar, so we're still good.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going back to page 154. I'll move that the District Development Committee receive the minutes from the community committees and the Manawatu
Mr. Chairman,
Youth.
can I just talk about
Council
Halcombe for a
meetings.
moment, because you omitted them?
Were they there? Okay,
That's okay.
I missed them.
They did have a
Apologies.
report. There's just a couple of key points. They're very appreciative about the hall being upgraded, re-roofed and painted. As I said, the old girl is starting to look quite good. The second thing was that they had a meeting. It was a well-managed election. The exact number of people that showed up got elected. The third thing is that in conjunction with the Stanway Halcombe Water Scheme, it was a request that we actually have text alerting go live, and thank you to Hamish's team because they got it up and running and we asked on a Tuesday and it was going live this week. And part of the reach out with the community is we understand that we're going to use that for civil defence and trial that text alerting, which we're going quite quickly. So thanks for the prompt response. Thank you.
Thank you. Go back to the motion, which I've read. Is there a seconder? Councillor Blackmore, any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. Right, so now we can go back to consideration of late items. I believe that everybody has been given a copy of the topic appointment of deputy chairperson. Steph, do you wish to speak to it? I know it's very straightforward.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's pretty self-explanatory. So the voting processes, there are 2 people nominated. If we go with option B, which is recommended in the resolution, then it comes down to the
Thank you.
same one.
Right, well, I'll call for nominations. I suppose I should handle item 1 first, shouldn't I? So recommendation 1, that the District Development Committee uses System B of clause 25 of Schedule 7, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, of the Local Government Act 2002 for the election of its deputy chairperson. So I'll move that. As a seconder. Your Worship, any discussion? Anyone want to use System A? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, carried. So we're using System B. And I'll now call for nominations for the position of Deputy Chairperson. Your Worship.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Councillor McFadyen to the role of Deputy Chair.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Underwood. Are there any further nominations? Councillor McFadyen has been nominated. Are there any further nominations? I have much pleasure in announcing that Councillor McFadyen will be our Deputy Chairperson. So I'll move number 2, that the District Development Committee appoints Councillor McFadyen as its Deputy Chairperson. I guess we should second it and move it. Is that seconded by, well, we've taken it from Councillor Underwood, haven't we?
Accept the nomination.
He's got no option. He's got no option. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, carried. Congratulations, Councillor McFadyen. A tough fought battle.
Well, mentor.
Now, the other one, which is a very late item, was just an overview and purpose of the committee. Little unfortunate that our General Manager, Lynn, is away. Otherwise, I think she might have led this section. But you might recall, though, I think you're all on, well, most of you are on focus groups, possibly not the infrastructure one, but the economic development, community development, and district planning focus groups. If you are, you would have received a report with your agendas, and it actually starts off that the District Development Committee, the DDC, has delegated authority from council to have governance oversight of community development, economic development, district placemaking activity, and community honours awards, while also being charged with determining what community wellbeing means for council. So I refer you to or even before the agenda, when you're looking at the agenda document, it's got the membership, and then it's got the terms of reference. So really page 2 and 3 of the agenda document. So somewhat similarly to what we did in the focus groups, we've got some terms of reference here which relate to I don't really intend to read them out. There are a number of items there for relating to community development. There are a number relating to economic development, and there are a number relating to district placemaking. So thinking about the Alicia Mackay training, where we need to stand on a hill and look at the big picture, the goal setting, we need to give some thought as to what we're wanting to achieve from this committee going forward. And I don't intend to spend much time at the moment, but I do wish this to be a major topic on the agenda for the next meeting. So I thought we'll just touch on it now. Do you have your hand up? Councillor Quigley.
Thank you. You used the word placemaking there. I don't want to show my ignorance, but well, I'm going to anyway. Can you put that into plain terms for me, or layman's terms, or
I'm glad you asked that question.
Retired builders terms, or?
Because I almost came prepared and then forgot where I put it. So it's a good question. What is placemaking, district placemaking? I'm going to start off with a few comments, and then I'll open up to others who wish to chip in and add to it what it means. So I think I'll start with this. Placemaking is a people-centered approach to the planning, design and management of public spaces. Put simply, it involves looking at, listening to and asking questions of the people who live, work and play in a particular space to discover needs and aspirations. Then I go to, there are basically 4 types of placemaking: standard placemaking, strategic placemaking, creative placemaking and tactical placemaking. And effective placemaking delivers value on 5 pillars. These are economic. So we're looking for increased trade. So you can see how placemaking is going to dovetail or overlap with some of our focus groups. So first of all, economic, social, increased social connection. So there'll be sort of a community development linkage there. Cultural, same again, increasing vibrancy and cohesion. And environmental, sustainable greening and political. User buy-in, policy alignment, legislatively correct. So I think that perhaps a very practical example is what our 16 community committees do. They do local placemaking in their local district and village. That's a lot of that physical stuff in particular, but actually the social stuff as well, economic stuff, is placemaking. Here's an example of standard placemaking. Initiatives include street facade improvements, park improvements, events in town squares. This type of placemaking is broad and seeks to create incremental change that will result in an increase in quality of life in the long run. So that's my starter for 10. Anyone else like to add to that? So Councillor Underwood.
Would I be correct in saying that those pillars are the same as for the well-being? Are they economic well-being, cultural well-being, social well-being? Is that correct? You said there were 5. Was the last one political?
Yes.
Is that what the well-being ones are? Those 4? Those top 4?
Yes, I think that's well spotted. I think this is a very timely addition to the room. Matthew, come and join us. I've just had the question, what is placemaking? And I've shared some aspects of placemaking, but I'd be really good to get your starter for 10 on what is placemaking, as you see it.
Kia ora all. So I think placemaking is, it does have like a different definition in where you are. So locally, I'd say it's really driven by the work that Palmerston North City has done, where placemaking is very much about grassroots community projects, where you might have a community group take over a space. Think about it in terms of a cafe setting up seating outside to make public, the public space more interactive, kind of that claiming that public space by community groups, and definitely not council run thing, but the council supporting and enabling member groups in the public to use public space in a sort of a more inclusive, easier way. I think the term does have different definitions, and so in a wider context, I've heard of placemaking being even things such as the town centre refresh project, where it's a bigger council-led sort of we're doing something which is strategic, where we bring in all the different types of groups, we bring in the architects, there's council's infrastructure. So it can be as big as that, or it can be as small as what I've talked about. I think definitely locally, it's definitely sitting more in that low-hanging fruit, and that's solely based on sort of the Manawatu New Zealand experience. Does that fit with what was previously said?
Brilliant. Yep. So I was just about to add that quite a bit of what is contemplated with the town centre refresh could be defined as placemaking, but town centre refresh is probably going to, there's an economic development component, certainly a district planning component, community development, but it's what we're trying to do is get the community to make the space more usable, or the spaces. And I've just also referred to, I think, what our community committees, a lot of what our community committees do is placemaking. They're improving their place, making their village, making their district more livable, and improving the quality of life. And some of it's social, cultural, economic, environmental, possibly. So yeah, there are a number of different definitions. Anyone else like to throw in their tuppence worth to add to what we've got? Okay, thank you. Councillor Underwood.
I just noticed that you said spaces in places, and I was thinking maybe making a space into a place. So a space has no kind of, it's just empty. Whereas you make it into a place, then it's got a place, it's a belonging. I'm just wondering if you get people saying this is our place, and then they get a bit territorial and don't allow others to come into it.
Hopefully not, but I think what you said, I mean, Manchester Square it's a great square. It's got huge potential. Some wonderful things happen there. Fielding on a Friday is pretty special. So the more we fill it up with events, with the likes of the farmers market, other markets. I looked out my window yesterday and there were 7 1930s V8s parked up in the quadrant. It adds to the vibrancy. It's place as opposed to space. So I think that's a good point, Councillor Underwood. Councillor Short.
And sometimes when the council's doing something anyway, it gives opportunities for other things to happen around it. And perhaps a good example is Kimbolton Village.
Yes.
The main street was due to be resurfaced, which was going to be quite a big job. And the local community came together and decided to give it a theme and make it a bit more rural. And I'm sure most of you have been to Kimbolton and seen how good it looks now, using the ideas of the locals, and most of it was constructed by the locals as well. And now you hear lots of people passing by, can't get over it. They drive out where they think they're going into the middle of nowhere, and then wow, there's this village. And it's because they've used placemaking to make it attractive and welcoming.
Going back, Her Worship was a great placemaker in her previous role at Fielding Promotion. Things like honouring local people who'd done well. So I remember was it Welcome Back Silver Sally Clark, who'd been an equestrian that won a silver medal. There were a lot of celebrations in the square. Most times there was a big event at Manfield, in order for the drivers to add points to their championship, they actually had to come into the square and sign autographs for the kids, show off the cars, etc. We had trucks, we had Formula, all sorts of racing cars, saloon cars. So we had the, what was the big rally? What was it called? Targa Rally for a number of years. In fact, they had to take off through the clock tower. To me, all that stuff is placemaking, and creating energy, creating vibrancy, interest. Recently, they tried with the gravel and tar a couple of years ago, somewhat disappointingly, I would think, but there was an effort to get all the cycling community to be excited about coming into our town. Your Worship, anything you'd like to add? You've got a lot of experience.
Yeah, it's a big word because so much sits underneath it, but I think it's about making people feel proud of where they are and empowering people to, like we do with our community committees, to be part of making their space where they live, their community, whatever it is, the town centre, a better place. But it's also about understanding that, and I'll use events as a good example. Events, you can look at it and say, so what, you run an event, but it's about what is the impact, sometimes really hard to measure, of an event in your community, on your locals, on visitors, on potential new residents, all those kind of things. So it's a word that encompasses a whole lot of things about making the space that you live in a better place in a whole lot of different ways.
I think there's some exciting potential for local iwi to have a high profile in our community. Some of our public spaces, it's not for me to suggest what that might be, but the general concept, I'd love to do some placemaking with Ngāti Kōwhara, for example, and so I think that's something for Ngāti Kōwhara to come to council and make some suggestions, but I think there's a glaring gap at the moment in our public areas, and you've heard Councillor Bill say previously that Marae and a number of things are sort of hidden away a bit and out of the main. So I think that would be something that we could address really positively. So there's lots of potential there. This committee, district development, I guess one of the things it can do is make decisions that might come from focus groups, the community development and the economic development focus groups. They don't necessarily have to come to this committee, but it is once again, it's an opportunity to take some load off council. In the paper from Lynn, the district planning was mentioned under that category as well. My conversations with the chief executive would indicate that that's not intended. So district planning is separate. Your Worship, anything you'd like to add in terms of your vision for the committee?
I think that the difficult thing, well, the thing to get our head around is that this is a standing committee, so it has formal process and it's public, etc. But I'm hoping that through the focus groups that you've just talked about, and that we can, with the staff, generate a whole lot more activity and ideas, and not necessarily council driven, maybe council facilitated, council led, to work on, to improve our district development overall. So by pulling it out of the council space and pulling economic and community together, I know at the beginning of it, it's quite hard to get your head around, like, how does this fit and what fits where? And I think that will happen as we go. We've got the terms of reference. But, you know, to me, the door's wide open about where we can go with this and what we can do with it. It's just a matter of, yeah, being brave and thinking big.
Great.
Oh,
Yes, Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. Just thinking, building on that kind of purpose that's been discussed and building on placemaking, what jumps out to me for these terms of reference is we've got a purpose that's quite aspirational and high level. And then we jump to responsibilities that don't really imply a lot of input and control. It's receive this, receive that, approve one thing or the other. And I wonder whether there's something in the middle around the role. So from purpose to role to responsibilities. And the things that come to mind about role, in whether it's in placemaking or community economic, kind of the role around the purpose would be things like now and into the future. So this group really understanding what the future could be. When we consider place, considering things like look and feel, understanding our unfair advantages as a district that lead to opportunities like, and these come up in the forum, the focus groups, particularly economic, but understanding, you know, the opportunities for tourism, understanding what it means. We heard in council earlier today about Manfield, but what does it mean to have Manfield and the Civic Centre and the Little Theatre, all things considered? You know, what does it mean to have all of those three opportunities together? Because 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't necessarily equal 3, it might equal something else. And I would see this place as where the convergence of those ideas and plans that come out of the economic focus group and community focus group coming together, because a lot of it will be common and interdependent between the two. That's just kind of what's come to mind as everyone's talked on the purpose.
And I think, thank you. I think something great came out of the focus groups the other day, and I've got to thank Councillor Hadfield. I don't know if he can hear me, but he's put his hand up, so that's good. Councillor Hadfield has suggested that we, as a council and a community, should actually have a discussion about what we'd like fielding in the district to be like going into the future, including what sort of population is ideal. Is it 200,000? Is it 25,000? Is it 15,000, which should be getting smaller? So these are, I think it's really, it's a topic that's worthy of a discussion, because if we, for example, decided that some sort of capped population was advantageous, that affects Mr. Waugh in terms of general manager infrastructure hugely, doesn't it? Because when it affects Matthew when we're going to do growth, looking at growth studies, etc. So it's a really cool high level conversation to have about where we might want to end up. And just going back, when the population was probably about 13,000, I think, it's currently about 18,000. But there was a committee that Rob Moody, Mayor Moody, chaired, associated with fielding promotion, that was called Fielding 20,000. And that at the time, that was considered, that was an aspirational population aim. So that the group, I would say, largely representing the community, believed that 20,000 was an ideal population. Well, we're almost there. So what do we think in 2023? Do we want to be 40,000? Do we want to be 80,000? Do we want? And I mentioned, some of you heard this before, but I mentioned in 1982, I went on a train through a village in South China that I thought was about the size of Halcombe. My daughter went there, I think it was 2 years ago, and it's now 18 million people. So, you know, big difference. I probably don't expect Fielding to get to 18 million, but it's, and also years ago, we invited Bob Jones or Sir Bob Jones to challenge us as a community on what we actually think Fielding should be, what it should be like. And he gave us, he said, you need to think about it. Do you want to be a blue worker town, blue collar worker town? If you do, fantastic. If you don't, you need to think about it and plan accordingly. Do you want to be the violin capital of the world? Do you want to be secondhand book capital of the world? So these are sort of, you know, way out there sort of ideas, but it was the concept stuck in my mind. Yes, we should think about what we want to be. Do we want to be the agribusiness capital of New Zealand? Seems like a real possibility. So I'd like to just challenge you to think about adding to that, we'll have that discussion at some stage, probably in a workshop, maybe at this committee, I'm not sure, we'll talk to the Chief Executive. And as Mayor Helen has touched on, we've got the terms of reference. Councillor Blackmore has sort of challenged us that maybe there's a bit missing there that we should look at adding to. We're right at the very beginning of this, so the world's our oyster. We can do whatever we like, really. So let's think about it. Councillor McFadden.
I think what we're really sort of missing, and I'm sorry to go back to corporate world, but I spent a bit of time, is that they talk about having a helicopter too low to the ground, right? And like the focus groups and everything, we're really quite low. You know, we're sort of looking at it in little segments, right? You know, and whilst I get it's a little bit like a wagon wheel, they've got to have all the spokes. What we really need to do is lift it up a bit and see what our long-term vision is for our region, and then actually define what the enabling conditions, what do we have to actually do to get it there, and then what are the barriers to actually achieve that. And from that, really just to take the direction that we have to go to get it there, and our behaviour that we have to implement to make it.
Brilliant, thank you. All right, well, I think that's probably a reasonable point to finish up for the day. Has anyone's got anything else? Well, I will declare the meeting closed. Thank you. And thank you for your input. Thank you, Matt, for coming in.